So here's a question for you. Have you ever changed your mind about, I don't know, something you want out of life or something you want to do, maybe even something with your identity and how you show up in the world? And then at the same time, immediately feel like you've got to defend yourself? I mean, not because someone was attacking you for you wanting to change your mind, but I don't know, it's almost like it's because you're embarrassed maybe that you are changing your mind. I feel like the first thing that people love to say is, "But I thought you loved that." Or "I thought you loved them." Or I thought you loved what you do. I thought you loved living there." Yeah, so obviously I'm saying this because yeah, me too. But at the same time, don't you think it's interesting that a sentence that simple can make us question everything? Like when they say that to us, all of a sudden we feel like we're scrambling, right? Like, no, I did love it. I wasn't lying. I really did mean it when I said that. And then before you know it, it feels like you're not even talking about the thing anymore. We're like defending ourselves, who we are. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Maybe it's obvious that I'm in that change or identity crisis, or what am I going to be doing next, or where am I even going with this podcast, right? I'm in it. That's why I'm talking about it. And it's definitely not because I've figured something out. It's the opposite. But maybe you are too, even if it's on a small topic. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about what happens when we stop buffering ourselves from life, right? When we stop constantly reaching for distractions, when we let ourselves actually feel life skin to skin. Remember that? That was the Selfish AF episode. And then last week, we started talking about noticing. It's about interrupting that momentum and that chatter of our minds long enough to hear ourselves again, long enough to notice birds, trees, silence, just our own freaking thoughts, long enough to remember what home within feels like. But here's what nobody's talking about. It doesn't end with noticing, or as they say, stop and smell the roses. But then they don't say what's after that. But eventually, if you stay quiet long enough, it's true, you'll notice things. But what I'm finding this week, you'll also notice some things you weren't expecting. You might notice that something you've been saying about yourself just doesn't feel true anymore. Maybe you've always said, "I love my job." Do you? I mean, maybe you do. Or maybe you've just said it so many times that you've stopped asking yourself if you do still love your job or love what you do. Or maybe you've always said, "This is just who I am." Is it? Or is it just who you've been for a really long time? And that's where things get uncomfortable, right? Because the moment we've sat in that long enough and we start asking these questions, that other voice shows up. "But people know you for this. You've built your life around this. You can't just change your mind now." Can I tell you what I've realized? I don't think we're actually afraid of changing our minds. I think we're afraid of being seen changing them, like being seen while we're changing them. Maybe that's why when we're scrolling on social media, there's those quotes of like, "Do it in the silence," and then show up when you're all brand new. Like, show up when the success has happened. I think we're afraid of being seen during the changing of our minds. Changing your mind privately, that's one thing. Changing it where other people can watch, oh my gosh. Where the people knew an earlier version of you. I'm literally crossing my arms and legs and curling up in a ball saying this. That's super vulnerable. That's what I've been feeling every single week with this podcast. It's funny because I sit here, right? I'm just talking. I'm just wondering. I'm walking through my truth out loud. Very much what I call my inside voice. But then someone I haven't seen in years says, "Oh my gosh, Jen, I've been listening to your podcast." And I swear, every time I just want to crawl under a table. And it's not because I'm ashamed, it's because all these different versions of me are suddenly meeting each other, if that makes sense. My old hairstylist world, people I went to school with, friends, family, people who knew me in one chapter are now hearing me from another. That's not even defined yet. I'm just pressing record for a little bit and then sending it out. I don't know if this will become something someday. There's just something incredibly exposing about that. And it's not because this version is more real than other versions, because those were real too, right? They belonged to the season that they belonged to. But this is different. This is me. I'm thinking out loud before I know where the thoughts are really going. A little terrifying. But there's nowhere to really hide. Actually, that's probably not the right way to word that. Maybe it's because there's nowhere left to perform, because I'm not showing up as an entity or a business or someone else's business. I actually wonder how much of our lives we spend protecting that image instead of protecting our inner truth. You know what else I've been realizing? It's amazing how quickly changing our minds can turn into questioning our character. I mean, think about it. Someone says, "But I thought you loved that." And then somehow we don't hear curiosity from them, do we? We hear accusation. "I thought you loved that." Wait, did I? Was I pretending? Was I trying to convince other people, or was I trying to convince myself? And if I'm walking away, does that mean I never loved it? Or maybe I still love it and I'm leaving anyway? Is that allowed? Seriously, is that allowed? Because it seems like somewhere along the way, I think we started believing that if something changes, then everything before it must have been a lie. But is that true? I loved being a hair artist. I really did. Not because it was easy, not because it paid the most. I loved the creativity, the people, the conversations, the way someone could walk in carrying the weight of the world and leave standing a little taller, lighter. I loved it. Then I became a national platform educator. I loved that too. Getting on stages, teaching, watching people believe in themselves, watching those aha moments happen. I loved that. And now, now I'm sitting in a room every week by myself, talking to a little furry microphone. Just wondering, thinking, noticing. And somehow, I don't know, I love this too. So, which one is the lie, right? Maybe none of them. Maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, did I really love it? Maybe I should be asking, did I love it for the season it belonged to? Ooh. Yeah, because those are two very different questions, right? Did I really love it? Or did I love it for the season it belonged to? We don't go asking for our tuition back because we don't live in the dorm and sit in classrooms anymore, right? The season did exactly what it was supposed to do. It shapes you, it stretches you, it introduces parts of ourselves we couldn't have met in any other way. And then it ended. Not because it failed, but because it was complete. What if careers are like that? What if dreams are like that? Goals? What if our different identities are like that? What if leaving something doesn't mean it wasn't valuable? What if it means it gave you what it came here to give you? Which has me wondering how many of us keep repeating yesterday. Not because yesterday still fits, but oof, But because we're terrified that leaving it behind suddenly means that all that time didn't matter that we put into it. I refuse to believe that those years are wasted. I won't. Because really, what if they were just your investment? It was your tuition into what's next. Your tuition doesn't become meaningless just because you've graduated. But I'm spinning on this, changing your mind, I don't know, publicly, even if it's not publicly like social media or an announcement, but like publicly to your people. People know you're going to be making a change. Why does that feel so personal? Why don't we just accept that as that we're changing tomorrow? Why do we feel like we need to rewrite yesterday when we're changing our mind? Why does it have to feel like we're saying, I was wrong about the last choice or what I've been doing? Why does it got to feel like we must have lied or wasted time? Honestly, I think truth is a lot kinder than that. I think yesterday is exactly what you needed. You needed that to become the person who's asking different questions today, right? Maybe loving something completely for the entire season it belonged to isn't inconsistency or being indecisive. Maybe it's simply gratitude. We can live in gratitude for each of the seasons, no matter how long they are. Whether you've invested 30 years into something or you've invested 30 days into something, we can be grateful and then change our mind. Actually, maybe this is what alignment actually is. Oof, I feel something like burning in my belly right now. So I feel like we hear about alignment all the time, whether it's quotes or somebody talking about it on social media. We've heard it most of our adult life, right? Live in alignment, find alignment, get back into alignment. But honestly, I don't think I ever knew really what it meant as in like the action part, because it sounds beautiful and it sounds like mentally like, yeah, that's what I want to do is be in alignment. But it's also like kind of vague. But this week, as I was trying to be in this practice of noticing, I think I'm beginning to understand it better. And it's less mystical than I thought. Maybe alignment is simply telling yourself the truth. Not the truth that everyone believes about you, not the truth that your resume tells, not the truth your social media tells, not the truth you've been repeating to yourself for years. The truth. The truth that's here today, right now, in this minute. That's probably where discernment comes in, actually. Because stopping to smell the roses, that's not the destination. That's not the goal. That doesn't end the journey. It begins it. For example, I can notice that something feels off, right? I can notice that I keep feeling drawn somewhere. I can notice that I'm exhausted. I can notice that I feel alive when I'm creating. I can notice that something doesn't fit anymore. But then that's when the harder question comes in. What's that trying to tell me? And that's the discernment. Not reacting, not burning your life down or quitting your job tomorrow. Just being honest long enough. I know we've been talking about pausing long enough. What if we're honest long enough to ask better questions? Like, why am I still doing this? If today was day one, would I build it like this the same way? Is this still true? Have I outgrown this or have I just gotten comfortable? Am I staying because I love it? Or, there's a good one. Or because I'm good at it? Oh, snap. Because those aren't actually the same thing. We realize that, right? I'm going to say that again. Am I staying because I love it? Or am I staying because I'm good at it? Oh, I just want to press into this more. Being rewarded for what you're good at isn't the same thing as being fulfilled by it. You can get the reward and still have that, like, oh, something's missing still not fully fulfilled. I'm getting the money, I'm getting the compliments, I'm getting the promotions, but there's something still missing. Being rewarded for what you're good at isn't the same as being fulfilled by it. They're not the same currency. Something inside of you is still whispering, there's more. There's more. I don't know what it is, but there's more. It's not more success, because you probably have gotten that. It's not more achievement. You're doing that. But there's just more truth that you haven't tapped into yet. That's why I say if we get honest long enough, gosh, that's probably why this gets so uncomfortable. Like when we change our mind about something, it is uncomfortable. It's the moment we're telling ourselves the truth. But damn it, it's also the time when that other voice comes in. You can't change now. People are counting on you. This is who you've always been. You've already built a life around this. What's everyone going to think? I know I'm like making fun of that voice. I'm not saying that voice is evil. I genuinely think it's trying to protect us. It wants us to stay accepted, predictable, understandable, safe. So actually, let's take this further. How many of us are protecting that image of where we were, who we were with, who we were working for, the role we played, that whole identity, okay? How many of us were protecting that image when what we were really longing for is the permission to protect our inner truth, our rawest version of ourselves? Because if there's one thing I'm learning, it's that this whole alignment thing, that's not always peaceful feelings. Sometimes it does feel like grief because there's things we have to let go of. There's people we have to let go of. There's achievements that we have to detach ourselves from. That's all grief. Grief doesn't mean it has to be a literal death. It feels confusing in the body, doesn't it? I'm picturing this like you're standing in the middle of your own life and you're just like looking around. At the same time, you're taking inventory and you're asking, would I build all of this again if today was day one? Not because your life is bad, not because you failed, not because you were wrong, but because you were honest long enough to ask yourself the tough questions. Maybe that's what growth actually looks like. Not becoming someone else, just becoming honest long enough to hear yourself. Makes sense why changing our minds feels so scary. I don't think we're afraid of change. Some of us are begging for it, right? So I don't think we're afraid of change. I think we're afraid of what change says about who we've been. Because if I leave something, does that mean I was wrong? If I choose something different, does that mean everything before this was a mistake? If I stop introducing myself the way I always have, who am I now? I think that's the fear. Not changing. It's being seen changing. That's the awkwardness I was talking about 2 episodes ago when I said, give me those awkward moments back. I want to be skin to skin contact with that. I want to feel those awkward moments again, if that means that I'm going to feel what it's like to live, to be alive, to be in this human experience. Because changing privately, that's easy. Nobody has to know. Nobody's going to have any questions. Nobody has to compare this messy version of you in the middle to the version of you that they remember. that was put together, that was established, right? But when people know you as one thing and suddenly they meet another version of you, for some reason, something inside of us wants to explain ourselves. It's like we want to justify, we want to defend, we want to make sure they know that I wasn't lying before. I really did love it. I really did mean it. And maybe you did. Maybe changing your mind doesn't erase the value of who you used to be. Like I feel my nervous system softening, my shoulders relaxing, just saying that. Maybe changing your mind doesn't erase the value of who you used to be. Maybe it actually honors it, because those versions of you are who got you here. Like for me, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't the makeup artist Jen, or the stay-at-home mom Jen, the dental assistant Jen, the hair artist Jen, the national educator Jen. I wouldn't be here without every version of me. And all of those versions loved what she was doing. None of those are versions of me that I need to apologize for. They're versions of me that I am super grateful for. Maybe that's why my gratitude feels so different than guilt. Because I feel like guilt would say, I have to stay. Otherwise, all of that was for nothing. Where instead, my gratitude says, thank you. You've given me exactly what I needed. Now it's time to keep walking. Does that make sense? You know what's interesting? Creation, all things in creation, they don't seem to ever struggle with this. The seasons aren't apologizing for changing. The tree doesn't defend why it had to let go of its leaves. It doesn't spend all winter saying, but I thought I was supposed to stay green forever. It just simply responds to what's true. Maybe we made ourselves believe that consistency is the highest virtue. Stay the same, stay predictable, stay recognizable, stay on brand, stay in your lane, stay where people understand you. But what if truth is the higher virtue than consistency? Oh, now that's something. See, now we're tapping in. Because here's what I'm beginning to suspect. Sometimes the most honest thing you'll ever do is disappoint the version of you that made promises before you knew what you know now, where you are now. Oh, oh. And maybe we might be calling that betrayal to ourselves, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's growth. Which leads us to a word I wrote down in my chicken scratch notes, and that word is permission. Thought about that a lot this week. Not permission from other people, but permission for ourselves. And I couldn't help but keep thinking of my dad's last day on earth. So this was 4 years ago. My dad was dying from brain cancer. The doctors had told us actually that he only had a few weeks up to a month. But instead, in the typical fashion of my dad, he gave us 4 more months. He's like, oh yeah? Bet. 4 months we weren't expecting. 4 months that became some of the most precious time our family has ever had. So me, my sister, and my mom, we all had 3 different shifts with him. I was with him on first shift, my mom second, and my sister on third shift. We had him at home. And I was with him in my first shift. And so I was helping him with all the things, just doing the ordinary things. I'm washing his face, I'm brushing his teeth, and making sure he's comfortable. Mind you, he rarely talked at this point, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. Usually when he was mumbling things, he wasn't really talking to us. He was just kind of mumbling things, and he never lost his memory on like who we were, anything like that. But he just kind of turned his head towards me and he said, I feel like I'm going to die today. And I was really taken by that. And so as I'm like fluffing these pillows, I said, what? And he said it again. I feel like I'm going to die today. Well, there was nothing that had changed in his medical stuff that, nothing was alarming that would insinuate that today would be the day. He was just as normal as he had been for the last 4 months. And so, how we often hear the stories or people give the advice on like, you got to make sure you got to let him go and you got to let him know that it's okay to let go. So constantly in my head in that anticipatory grief of, what are those last days going to be like? And are we going to have to tell him it's okay to go? And how would I say that if that happened? And when I say he didn't lose his memory on who we were or anything like that, but he did often forget that he was ill. So he would think that his life is just normal and it's just another day. And so when he said, I feel like I'm going to die today. And when he said that second time, it hit me. It was like, oof, this is that moment that I've got to tell him it's okay to go, Dad. And I tried so hard to just be my optimistic self. And I said, it's okay. It's okay. And he just kind of looked at me and just kind of like strange, like, well, why would you say that? Why would that be okay? Again, I think he's kind of forgetting that he's sick and that confused, glassy, like he's looking through, he's seeing me and having this conversation through the lens of medications, brain cancer, confusion, but also like, why in the world would my daughter say, that's okay? Just strange, right? Why is he looking at me like this? Why does he look confused? Why is this not the answer he was looking for? I've rehearsed this 1,000 times in case I would have to be the one to tell him it's okay to go. Isn't this what he needs from me? And then it hit me. And I stopped and I sat on the side of his bed. And I looked him right in the eye and I said, is that okay with you, Dad? And it was like I could see his heart just swell and his eyes even got a little bigger. And suddenly it was like he wasn't seeing me through medications and brain cancer. It was like he was looking right into my soul. And he didn't have to say a word, and he didn't. But it was that softness that he relaxed into. It wasn't because he was scared. It's just very, very present. The most present I had probably seen him in over a year. Then he just closed his eyes. And that's when I knew. It wasn't that I had to give him permission. It was that he had finally answered the question for himself. And then many hours later, he did pass away. Gosh. Gosh, I've thought about that moment so many times. That's not a story about death. This is about truth. And maybe that's what I've been learning through all of this. Not just through this conversation, not just through this podcast, but through life. As I mentioned 2 episodes ago, I realized that I do want to stop buffering my experience. I want to stop reaching for distractions every time life gets quiet. I want to feel life. And then in that last episode, I started noticing the birds, the trees, the silence, the way creation simply creates again and again and again. And eventually, I brought that noticing home, like back to my centering, my home within. But it didn't end with the noticing this week, because eventually you notice something that asks something of you. You notice a story. You notice things that no longer feel true to today. You notice an identity that no longer fits. You notice goals and dreams that did exactly what they came to do. You notice a version of success that isn't the one you're longing for anymore. That's uncomfortable. That's that awkwardness. because it brings you to this place where now you have a choice. Do you keep protecting that image, or do you now start protecting your truth? And maybe alignment is simply just telling yourself the truth, today's truth, not yesterday's truth, today's. And maybe today's truth doesn't erase yesterday's, it simply thanks it. Like, thank you for getting me here. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for carrying me. Thank you for belonging to the season you belonged to. And then letting it become that tuition we talked about, letting it become the investment to the next place. So, in the same way that I was wrong about what I thought my dad needed, I'm wondering how many of us were waiting for someone else to give us permission on something, permission to change, permission to evolve, permission to outgrow something, permission to want something different, permission to speak that truth. And like my dad's story also, maybe the people who love us the most can't actually give us that permission. Maybe all they can do is ask us the question, the same question that I unknowingly asked my dad. Is that okay with you? Not, is it okay with your family? Is it okay with your followers? Is it okay with the people who knew you 5 years ago? Not, is it okay with the version of you who made promises, like promises before you knew what you know now? Is it okay with you? Maybe that's the beginning of alignment. Maybe that's where discernment ends and honesty begins. So this week, how about we don't rush to change anything? We don't burn our life down. We don't make a dramatic announcement anywhere. Just get quiet enough to ask ourselves one honest question when we're looking at our yesterday. Is this still true today? Actually, let's take this further. If your answer surprises you, don't judge it. Just listen. Maybe that truth has been waiting patiently for you to become quiet enough to hear it. Gosh, if there's one thing I've learned through this village we're creating together, it's that we all really are honest with ourselves enough through this walk that we can say out loud to each other, we did only what we knew. And when we knew better, we did better. That's what this is about. We're all just walking each other home.